Yeah, before we get to the game, I just want to tell you a little story. So, when I was an undergraduate, I took a class on individuality in modern political thought. As you can imagine, it was a pretty standard history of political thought. We read a bunch of Hobbes and Montaigne and other folks, and we talked about individuality in those thinkers' work. But when it comes the end of the term, we come to the end of the terms, the instructor decided to be a little cute and give each of us individualized assignments because the course was about individuality. So we had a whole kind of ceremony where we drew notes out of a hat, and each one of us had to write our final assignment, or basically our final exam, on a different piece of writing. So that was fun, except half of the students dropped out and decided not to get credit for the course rather than finish the assignment. And one of the reasons people were pretty kind of upset is because some people got like long, complicated pieces of writing, some people got shorter stuff, and they felt it was unfair, or they didn't really want to finish that. So I benefited greatly out of it, but that got me thinking a little bit about individualized assignment. So how do we give students individual attention and not fall into the pit of, upsetting them, right?
Making them all quit the class.
Making them all quit the class.
Right.
If that's something that's important to you, right? And so in the vein of learning from game design, I thought we could take a look at some games that have done it well and learn from them. So this is Cosmic Encounter. It's a classic game from '79 that's still very popular, and they still print out a ton of expansions for. And one thing that this game has brought onto the scene is this mechanic and idea of asymmetric powers. Of course, it's existed in some fashions beforehand, but this really made it incredibly popular. So what do I mean by that? So this is a game where each player controls a set of planets, and they're trying to send their ships to gain colonies in other people's planets all over the galaxy. So the Gring spaceships here are trying to fly over to create colonies in other players, and vice versa. But what's cool and unique about this is that each player in this game has this alien race. So I may be the glutton, and you are the
Citadel.
The fuzzy citadel. And that alien race has like a special power that breaks the rule, and each one of us is very different. And so this creates this asymmetry where I'm playing a little different than you are. And the reason this is, I think, it's worth looking at for thinking about teaching is recall the problem my instructor had. Students are a lot like players in the sense that they really are concerned about fairness. So one of the biggest challenges of individualized assignment is that we want some kind of consistency, right? So we want to be evaluating our students on the similar level. We understand people are different; they have different inclinations, so we want to be flexible. Now, on the other hand, we want to be fair. Students are very upset if they feel like they're graded or evaluated unfairly. So what does Cosmic Encounter do? First of all, it gives you these powers. And then, the designers famously said, "Who cares about balance?" Right? So they do. So they give these powers that are fairly different and kind of unbalance the game. But how does it still work? Why does it still work? Well, first of all, it works because the way the game works is that you can ally with each other to kind of partner and counterbalance different difficulties of assignments. So here's an idea: why not give different assignments? Some of them may be tougher or bigger, but those assignments could be worked in pairs or groups. So we usually give either a group assignment, let students work in pairs or groups, or an individual assignment, and that's it. But what about if you gave students the choice? And you gave students a choice between working on a bigger project in a group or an individualized assignment.
And so, quick question there. Would the idea be that it's worth the same amount of points or value in the class, but just students would have an option of how they engage the assignment?
Yeah. It's giving the students the choice. It's also addressing different individual students, and it's a way to balance, right? So that's kind of the idea. Of course, some students can complain or may feel it's unfair. I think that's part for the course in in any kind of teaching assignment. But it's a little bit breaking the mold of either giving everybody the same exam, the same assignment, or having a group project. One other thing that the Cosmic Encounter does that I think is really, really interesting is that it gives players control in another way. So you can see these aliens have like different colors on the top. So this one has a green light. There's some of them that have like a yellow light on the top, and then
mine has a red light.
Yeah, so these are different levels of craziness and difficulty. So the green ones they break the game in relatively minor ways, and then the yellow ones are in moderate ones, and then the red ones are the craziest. And the idea is that first players can choose how crazy they want to go with it. So you could do that, but also people know that you have the crazy power. So the game allows players to try to counterbalance that without that. So that is again kind of giving students a choice between like different difficulty of assignment.
Do you have an example of what you mean when you talk about difficulty? So to make an assignment more difficult, like you might argue that just doing it in a group makes it difficult because you already have to deal with multiple people and coordinating. Although it could be the case that breaking down a certain task into smaller tasks makes it easier. So could this be used for, this idea of like individualizing assignments? Could it be used for someone that's teaching ethics in a way that's focused on texts, or would you see it for a different kind of assignment?
Right, so I'm thinking about it in terms of like tackling texts, for example. I mean, depending on what your field. I feel like often instructors have a good sense of what's more difficult for students. And they often would want to challenge the stronger students a little more than other students. But then when it comes to, especially to assignments, and they run into this issue of not being unfair. So I'm just trying to think about ideas to work around that.
I wonder too if this could be relevant by offering different kinds, like different through an assignment through different media. Right, so it might be the case that one student feels particularly inclined to writing a paper, but another student feels really inclined to writing a song or having some sort of like artistic visual representation or doing some sort of group presentation. It seems like it would make it a bit tricky in terms of assessing. Right, it makes it a bit challenging as the instructor to figure out how to grade or assess these quite individualized assignments.
Sure, I mean for sure, and I think, I mean whatever the assignments that you pick, they have to make sense for your field. So if an artistic expression makes sense for your field, I mean it might not for teaching ethics in some ways, but maybe it would, right? But I mean even if you're doing, some programming writing or statistical analysis, some projects are larger. So you could think of, students working in a group tackling a larger project in that regard, or having an individual doing something that's more similar to our regular assignment. But think about why is it that we either have a group project that students are working in it, or everybody does the same kind of assignment, where what I'm suggesting, again, this is not solving all the problem. I'm just suggesting that if what your concern is fairness and how to overcome kind of the students' kind of complaints about that, you can offer a choice.
I think in my own teaching, I really enjoy doing that in perhaps even more minor ways. So even if it was the case that like an essay, right, or a paper was assigned to every student and they were to do it individually alone, giving the choice of prompts. Right? Giving them a choice of prompts, one of them being more focused on textual analysis, and maybe the other prompt being more focused on how can you bring a particular argument or concept into conversation meaningfully with something that's happening today. Right? So some students will be much more inclined to linking up with contemporary issues. Others will be really excited about spending a little more time on the text and like figuring out what's going on there.